So we have humanism that made its way into the higher education, or even all education.
Yes.
What about politics? Did we see, or in the courts? Here again, I mentioned in 1947, this rebellion, America's rebellion. We started seeing judicial legislation, where they began to undo some of these things.
Yeah, violation of separation of powers.
Yep.
Legislating from the bench.
From the bench.
And legislating by executive orders. Yeah. And that did happen. In fact, it was the Supreme Court more than anyone else in our government who laid the foundation for the destruction of America in decision after decision after decision. I'll never forget the decision they made concerning the display of the Ten Commandments in Kentucky. On every school classroom wall in Kentucky, there was the Ten Commandments. And somebody objected to that. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the court ruled that those Ten Commandments could not be on the wall. But what was even worse, I challenge you to find this on the internet and find the decision. The court said point blank, if that's on the wall of every classroom, the students read it, they might start obeying it. I thought that was the purpose. And they said, oh, that's just unacceptable.
Yeah.
And so they ordered it removed. Let me tell you something. When Poland was under communist rule, and the communist leaders of Poland said, we want the crucifixes removed from every classroom in this nation, the people went in the streets and said, you'll do it over our dead bodies. And they backed off.
Yeah. But we didn't see that in ours, did we?
No.
So we have politics now. We have higher education. What about the culture? Has the culture rebelled against God?
Absolutely. This cultural rebellion in this nation is just unbelievable. As I've told you before, every day I say to my wife, it can't get any worse. The next day it's worse. It's just worse. I mean, everything you can imagine they're attacking right now. A biology professor at a college in San Antonio, Texas, was fired last week. He's been there for 20 years as a distinguished professor of biology, and he was fired because 4 students got upset over the fact that he wrote on the blackboard that gender is determined by your gene. You either got an X or you got a Y. That's biological science.
Yeah, that's fact.
And they went to the administration and said, well, we can't tolerate this. And they fired him. They fired him. This morning I was reading about a professor in Pennsylvania who was fired because he was an English professor, had been at the university there for many years. And they told him, said, when you teach English from now on, you are always to teach the following, that American English is English that was designed by white people, and therefore it represents white majority,
racism,
white racism and
yep.
all, and you must let the students know that. And he said, I won't do it. And they fired him. The time is coming when Christians are going to have to stand up for what they believe. And are they going to stand or not?
Well, and even some, like here in this situation, standing, and the next day you might not have a job.
That's right.
So, I mean, it's a matter of making the decision and willing to stand on principles, which then is to take the consequences of being unemployed.
Jesus said we are to be salt and we are to be light.
Yep.
And we have to stand for righteousness. If we don't, nobody will. And the problem we've got is that today the number of people who profess to be Christians has dropped from 91% in mid-1950s to 61%. And the people who go to church every week, it's down to something like 20%.
Yeah, it's even
and
less,
dropping like a rock. And the pandemic has made it even worse.
And let's so America's rebellion. We have the politics, we have the judicials, we have the culture,
the church,
and that's the thing. The church now. So even the 20% that might go to church, they might be going to some liberally denominated church where they don't believe in the inspiration of Scripture or the authority of Scripture or the clarity. They've all
believe what you want to believe.
Many of them gone woke.
Oh yes, absolutely.
So I almost want to tell them, stop going to church. We don't want you going to church to get indoctrinated. Now they're becoming indoctrinated not just by higher education, but by the church.
Yeah. Well, 61% today who claim to be Christians, I am convinced that almost maybe the majority of them are cultural Christians.
Yeah, that's not even, not
born
real.
in a Christian home, raised up, they go to church sometimes, but they're not really born again. In fact, I used to have a colleague named Dennis Pollock who ministered with me for 10 years, and he loved to go out to apartment buildings and knock doors for Jesus. And he came back one time and he said, you know what I get? I knock doors and I say, are you a Christian? I say, yeah, I'm a Christian, but boy, I don't go out knocking doors. You must be one of those born-again Christians.
Is there any other kind?
No. He said, "You know, they say to me, you must be one of those born
again." Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's become a label.
He said, they think they're insulting me and they're really complimenting me.
It's so true.